Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I know people are still logging in. We had the maximum number of registrants possible. We maxed out at 101, and I know people are still trying to register. I feel badly that they're not getting in, but just everyone know that we are recording this. It will be available to view after the fact. We'll also have a full copy of the slide deck available for people to see. So just want to give a quick welcome, some housekeeping notes as you've been reading in the chat. If you can see the chat, everybody except those who are going to be presenting today are now muted, and their live feed is off, so we won't be distracted. There will be ample time at the end of the meeting for everybody to see that massive Brady Bunch screen we've all gotten so used to, and to smile and wave and say hello. I know we're all hungry to see the faces.
That was what it said.
So let's just make sure everyone is muted who doesn't have to be. And my many, many thanks to Ilana Cloud and Amber Curson, who are our co-producers behind the scenes, who will be handling the shifting of camera angles and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen through the magic of technology so we can jump into our slide presentation. And I apologize in advance for any kind of technical glitches. We don't mean to. So we're actually going to welcome to the stage, as it were, our own Cantor Vitells, who is going to be leading us in Nigun to get us warmed up for being together.
Where did you get this photograph? That's ancient. Okay, we're going to begin with Bina Nigun.
Thank you so much, Yasher Koach. That
You're
was
welcome.
wonderful. And now we're going to go right into our agenda. It's not a complicated agenda, but we do have a lot to cover in hopefully the next hour, maybe not more than an hour, but we'll have time to visit at the end. So we're going to move on to Rabbi Rose and his Devar Torah, followed by Daniel Petcher, our president.
Hi. Thank you to the Chazan for that beautiful nigun. I love that particular nigun, which I know holds a special place in his heart as well. Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to see so many people have plugged in for this meeting and are jumping in to hear what's going on. I want to begin just by saying that I hope that everybody is healthy and um, and I hope also that everybody's taking steps to do what they need to do to take care of their health. Now is a time for all of us to remain vigilant and to do those things which we know are so important for us to do, just the basic things to take care of ourselves. It can be tempting both because of our impatience and because the influence of other people who we see walking around, with less caution than perhaps they should be. It's easy to be influenced by that. But I hope that all of us are taking all of the necessary steps to be really, really cautious. I care about everybody in our congregation, and I really hope that you do what it takes to remain healthy. I also want to thank you, the many of you who have participated in so many different shul programs and online services we're doing, and we'll have a chance to tell you about what those are if you're not aware of them. But it's been really wonderful to, in spite of this period of disconnection that we're in, to be able to connect with so many people. I want to share some remarks about where we are as a congregation, and in light of the Torah portion, which I think contains a really important teaching for us, an important framework, I should say, maybe for understanding where we are and where we have to go. So I don't have to tell you that this is a year of change and a year of what feels like instability. Both the COVID situation that I talked about, all of the incredible transformations with our own country as it deals with its legacy of racial injustice and tries to find a path forward, and by developing a new kind of discourse. Um, the quarantining that we've all been doing, and the re-navigating we've had to do of our professional lives and sometimes our family lives in its wake, with a lot of political division as well. We live in a world that is undergoing an enormous amount of change. And so too, in our own congregation, we know that this has been and will continue to be a time of great change and seeming uncertainty, with my own role changing, and my role in the congregation changing. We have a rabbinic transition. Our education program is once again starting anew, and I'll just acknowledge here the incredible work of Jude, who stepped into such a difficult position as our educator and really upped our game as an institution in terms of education, creating a curriculum that was really just dynamic and steady and predictable and solid. Um, and in addition of, as I've said already a couple times, COVID-19 has kept us apart from each other, and that's what Jews do. We gather together, we come together, we create community. We like to be with each other and to talk with one another, and that's a hallmark of what it means to be a Jew. And so in this time of separation, it's just been really so challenging for us. So all of these things give us the sense that we are in a period of unknowns as a congregation, a period of not knowing. And I want to refer to the Torah portion here to give us a way to think about this moment, because in the Torah portion, it's a double Torah portion this week. And at one point, Israel finally makes its way to the banks of the Jordan River, to the Ever HaYarden. And in that sense, their journey is almost complete. And what's so interesting about this moment in their lives, the lives of the Israelites, as they stand just on the precipice of the land of Israel, is that what's right in front of them is both incredible challenges of the like that they've never had to face before, but also the greatest promise and the greatest blessing that they've ever had the chance to stand in front of. That is, as they confront now the possibility of actually entering the land of Israel. And I want to offer that as a framework for you to envision our congregation, envision yourself standing on the banks, proverbially standing on the banks of the Jordan River. as we too face a leadership transition, real challenges that are ahead of us, financial and otherwise, as you'll hear about it, and to understand that our purpose and the fulfillment of our purpose as a congregation lays by going through those challenges and moving through those challenges together, which I want to tell you we are very much fit to do. Every one of the challenges that I have mentioned so far has a response. We have a group of leaders who have an incredible vision of the future, and I don't just mean that in a general sense. I'm not just waving my tongue here. You'll hear a little bit more about the incredible work that's going towards building the future of this place. I'm delighted to tell you that while we're sad to be losing Jude, we have an incredible solution for our education in the coming year. Sharon, Pollin, who many of you know by name, if not by fabulous reputation, is going to be leading our education program, which is an incredible gift to us. And also, in some ways, in spite of COVID, we are more connected than we have ever been. Attendance at our classes is up, attendance at our services is up. I'm able to connect with a broader range of congregants than I have before. Congregants are connecting with one another in new ways. Obviously, it's not like the good old days. There's nothing like being in the presence of one another. But all of these things are board with its vision for the future. The steps we're taking towards improving education with this wonderful new addition to our staff, and the ways that we're continuing to connect through this online format and deepening connections with our congregation makes me very, very optimistic about the future. And so before I wrap up, I want to just underscore that this is the youngest and most dynamic board that I've worked with since I've been here. And you'll hear from this leadership, and many of you have already met some of these new young leaders. I feel confident, I would say not in spite of the challenges, but actually because of these challenges and the way that they've inspired people to rise up to face them. And so here's what I want to ask of you in light of this. So the Kotzker Rebbe, who, if you've listened to me at all, you know he's one of the great inspirations for me, and was an incredible Hasidic teacher. And he said that every day when he woke up, he had to decide to be a Jew. And what he meant by that was that he refused to take his tradition and his place among his people for granted. And he wanted to be actively engaged in his Yiddishkeit and his relationship to Torah and to prayer and to ethical growth, that decision every morning that he was going to actively be a Jewish person is what made him, I think, so unique and so powerful as a role model and as a teacher. So I want to invite you, particularly at this time in the life of our congregation, I want you to decide to be a member of this Jewish community. I want you not to take your membership at Congregation Shaarie Torah for granted, but I want you to rise each day and think of yourself as being part of an incredibly important and valued Jewish community in Portland, and then ask yourself, what can you do to help this community thrive and prosper? At this time, though, it's a time of great challenge and we're all limited in various ways. I want to ask you to find ways to increase your commitment to the synagogue. For some of you, that might be financial. For others of you, that might be through volunteering. And for others of you, it might just be being more engaged in our programs or spreading the word about our synagogue. But this is so important that you find a way to elevate your commitment, because if we can do that, and today's attendance is certainly an indication that people are still heavily invested in the future of the place, but if we can do that, then when we imagine ourselves as the Israelites standing on the banks of the Jordan, and here I'll wrap up, we know that there are challenges before us, as I said, but we also know that the future of our congregation, which is measured in our commitment to Torah values and our education of the next generation, and of our thriving and prospering together, and then we know that that's within our grasp. But it's really in your hands. And if everybody in this call doubles their commitment to the synagogue in some way, finds some way to increase their commitment, the future of the shul is indeed bright, because you have the leadership now to make it happen. And in closing, I just want to say I'm so privileged to work with this incredible staff, not only that put this meeting together, but that's really been carrying this congregation through such a challenging time. So I want to thank Jemmy, I want to thank Linda, and I want to thank Ilana and Amber, who Jemmy already gave a shout out to, Leslie, who's been just a wonderful addition to the staff, Alexi, Jude, I already mentioned. I'm excited to welcome Sharon, and also, of course, to the Chazan, who I have the incredible blessing of working with so closely. So thank you, and thank you to all of you for being here and for being part of the congregation.
Yasher Koach, thank you, Rabbi. We're supposed to leave that Sharon part for a surprise, but oops.
I couldn't hold myself back.
Okay, well, it's wonderful news, so we should say it more than once. Now we'll turn to Daniel Petcher, our president. And remember, I mentioned those technical glitches. You've been seeing things popping up on my screen every time someone rings the bell. I apologize. And also that we had the rabbi muted. Who knew we could do that? But Amber and Ilana are taking care of us behind the scenes. And now we'll pivot over to President Petcher.
Yasher Koach, Jemmy, and Rabbi, and thank you for opening this meeting with an appropriate frame of mind for the serious business and also the fun that we're going to have before us. I'm glad so many of you have prioritized your time for the shul today. This novel coronavirus pandemic is hitting us all hard. It hurts morale, it interferes with our programming plans, it messes with our finances, both as individual families and a congregation. It's frustrating. And while we all know that there will be an eventual end to this crisis, I can't just pencil it in for 4 weeks from Thursday between my 1:30 and 3 o'clock WebEx meetings. Sustaining our kahila through this transitional time may be difficult, but remaining exactly as we were pre-COVID is not an option. To survive and thrive, we must reinvest our efforts in Congregation Shaarie Torah. Let's think together, how is Shaarie Torah special to me and to my family? I'd like to hear your answers privately and publicly, because these reasons define who we are and who we will become. Personally, I'm here for the names that I see on my Zoom participants list right now. I believe the collective value we bring to the Jewish community. I also believe in our potential to develop into the most innovative institution of conservative Judaism in the United States, and to become a model for others in the process. One of our most important questions I've received recently has been, when are we going to start on the search for our next rabbi? And why does it look like we've done nothing yet? I'd like to take a moment to address that right now. As a member of the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, we're committed to working with the Rabbinical Assembly's placement process that successfully matches an average of 18 to 20 rabbis and congregations each year. This process begins with formation of a committee to begin a careful self-examination process. That will result in a document that describes to the rabbinical candidates just what sort of congregation we are. Excuse me. And what we hope to find in our next rabbi. After that document's publication comes interviewing, presentation of candidates to the community, selection, contract negotiation, and ultimately we will have a new person to provide our congregation with spiritual leadership for the years to come. There will be some minor adjustments to the process due to the pandemic, but surprisingly, these serve to make the process just a little bit more efficient. As Jews, our calendar keeps us oriented, grounded, and moving steadily forward. The placement process happens every year along another specific calendar. We will be starting that process to assess and define just who we are and who we want to be immediately after the high holidays. We can start sooner if we want to, but if we do, we'll have to pause for an interval for the process that's happening in the Rabbinical Assembly and in our peer congregations to catch up with us. I'd personally prefer to go through the process in one contiguous effort instead of the several isolated bursts. This should overcome the difficulty to maintain both patience and enthusiasm. Now you're about to hear from other board members, from staff, and from active volunteers an overview of the past year, including programs we've implemented, our response to the pandemic, our youth and child education programs, how we're doing financially, and finally, a glimpse of our plans for the future of our Kehillah. I thank you again for joining together at this time.
Thank you, Daniel. Yasher Koach. So we'll move forward in our little presentation and talk about the year in review. And this year started out like most others, and it was my first full year in a cycle with you. And I was pretty excited by it. We had things like Shabbat in the park and morning minyan. We had holiday and Shabbat services, a Torah study twice a month, family fun during Sukkot. So careful on that ladder, Daniel. Young adult Shabbat, latke making, the Hanukkah party, Shabbat Babayit. We launched the What's the Big Idea speaker series. Rabbi was teaching Kabbalah over at the JCC. Tu B'Shvat tree planting with the OBR, the Hamantashen project, the fun of the Purim party, just the beginning of March. And then suddenly this happened. And it really threw everybody for a loop. But what did we do? We pivoted and we moved into the virtual world. Thank you, Zoom. We've all gotten to be pretty good at this now. And so instead of being regular services, we have live streaming. We have morning minyan by Zoom. We've got Ta'am HaTorah weekly now instead of just twice a month. We've got twice monthly Kabbalah class, which is baffling to me. We have the Express Yourself program, Zoom Gali Gali for young families. Our What's the Big Idea speaker series shifted online for a really interesting talk about children in crisis at the border. We've got yarn crafting. I and Rabbi had our hairs cut on camera live for Lag BaOmer. Cantor's been leading the Nigun singing circle. We have extra prayer opportunities. We're meeting by Zoom. All these things that are going on, even taking part in community programming such as the Yom HaShoah commemoration and Tikkun Leil Shabbat. You can see Sarah Sturtz up there with her cheesecake for Shavuot. She's been doing some wonderful cooking demonstrations using her Instant Pot that I hope people have been watching. It's been a lot of fun to learn how we can still connect when we're not together. Oh, and that middle picture there, we've had 3 weeks now of surprise challah delivery to just seemingly randomly selected members of the congregation, and I hope you've been enjoying those. So I want to go through some of the stats because people ask, who are we reaching? Are we really reaching the same numbers we used to do? And I thank Ilana for pulling this information. So every Saturday, we have an average of 60 to 100 views on our services that are running through our website. Usually about an eighth of those views are watching the recorded version on the website after the fact. But because we're also looking on Facebook, sometimes we have over 1,000 views on Facebook throughout Saturday and Sunday for those live streaming services. And Facebook generally reaches many more people, an average of 200 or so views a week. And what you can't see in the chapel is Linda printed out pictures of certain congregants and taped them to the pews so that Rabbi and Cantor can see faces while they're davening. And periodically throughout the morning, Alexi will come in and flip the numbers on a chart in the back so they know how many people are viewing and how many people are in the room with them. So that's kind of fun. We've had over 250 unique viewers on our website for services throughout the time. Most of them are in Oregon, a few from Washington, but we've had 11 other states tune in, people from Israel, people from Mexico, people from Ireland. So we are far reaching, and it's a lot of fun to have people put into the chat on Facebook where they're viewing from and how meaningful it is. Our highest attendance was at the Shabbat and Yizkor service for Shavuot. during Pesach. People really are appreciative of being able to watch online. Most people watch for an average of 30 or 40 minutes or so. And then, we also have morning minions that I've had a lot of fun and growth attending. I never was able to get to the shul at 7:25. 8 o'clock is much more doable for me from home. And where before it used to be we'd be waiting for a full minyan by the time we're saying Kaddish at the end of the service, we have 15 plus people at the top of the hour so that those who are saying Kaddish are able to right from the start. We also have Torah studies regularly. We have the Kabbalah class. We had over 70 people from across the community tune in when Rabbi Rose and Rabbi Steve Fisher presented the Space Between Us dialogue. So that was really neat. And it was a nice mix of our congregants and the Kollel community. But I do think aside from today where we have maxed out our capacity in our Zoom room of over 100 people and people still trying to get in, I still think the highest viewership was the live Lag BaOmer haircutting. That was a lot of fun and people are saying we should do it again, and I certainly could use it again. I've got a special message coming up from some people who miss you.
Hi everybody in Zoom land. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to say hello tonight. Glad you could all be here. It's been an interesting 4 months as we've been out of the building but still working, and really looking forward to seeing you all hopefully soon, maybe over the summer, and have really enjoyed reaching out to more than 90 of you over the last few months to just say hello and check in. I hope everybody's doing well and staying healthy. Take care. Bye.
Hey, Shaarie Torah family, it's Linda. Just wanted to let you know that I'm missing everybody so much, and it's super lonely in the shul without you, and I can't wait until we can be all together. So until then, mwah.
Hi everybody, it's Jude here. Just wanted to say that I can't wait till we all get to be back in person together again. And I also have this shin to remind me of a few things. One is shalom, peace. 2 is Shaarie Torah and how strong a community we are, in person or online. And 3, it is to remind me that I should be studying my Hebrew over the summer. And so should you, so that you don't forget anything. Okay, have a great summer. Bye.
We miss you and hope to see you soon.
Hi everyone at Shaarie Torah. This is Jackie, your bookkeeper. Hope everyone's staying safe, and thanks for keeping me busy during this time. We look forward to seeing you in the fall. Bye.
Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in to all of our live streams and being on our classes. We miss you. Can't wait to see you soon. We miss you.
Can't wait to see you again. Very nice. So now you've had a few safe virtual kisses from the staff. Because we were talking about when we can see each other again, it's the perfect time now to look at how we're approaching the road to reopening. And I'm going to continue to say that we are, as you can see, adhering to all state and county guidelines and operating in an overabundance of caution. Our reopening task force continues to speak. We are using multiple resources that have been studied and shared, including from a collaborative nationwide conversation between United Synagogue and Union for Reform Judaism. All the best thinkers are sharing their thoughts and sharing their experiences and sharing how they're phasing back into gathering together. I know with the very recent uptick in cases across our state and across the country, people are being even more cautious than ever. The safety and well-being of our members is of utmost importance, and we keep repeating to ourselves, just because something is allowed doesn't mean we have to do it. So the building will continue to stay closed to foot traffic through the month of July as we look at what the trends are doing. We are putting into place protocols for how to come back into the building for limited in-person services. looking at where the seating should go, our airflow, our cleaning, everything that everybody is talking about how to reopen. We are right there with them. So I'm going to jump into the next slide and talk about where our numbers are at. So I also want to say thank you to this wonderful board we are working with. It's a lean, mean little group, and I don't mean mean in a mean way. I mean mean in an awesomely wonderful way, doing a lot of hard thinking, a lot of good, positive thinking, and I am so pleased and honored to be able to work with this amazing group of people. So thank you, and all of you, thank your officers. They do a lot behind the scenes. So looking at our numbers in this past fiscal year, we've had pretty much stability in membership. While we had 12 new members join, we actually ended up with a net loss of 4 due to a number of deaths in the congregation, due to some families moving out of state. Those families we were very sad to see go. Early on in the renewal process last year, we had some families who said we're not renewing for a number of reasons. Some were going to other congregations. Some had things going on in their lives where membership was not a priority. And then we also cleaned the roster a little bit, people who had not communicated despite many attempts throughout the year to reach out to them, indicating that, again, membership was not a priority. But of the group we have, again, it is an amazingly active membership here, where you think about if we have 244 households, and we have over 100 people here today, 100 households right now, and people trying to get in the door, that's an incredible percentage of active participants compared to the size of our congregation. And our members care. I can't tell you, especially during this time of staying at home, when I have been talking more to people on the phone or trying to have one-on-ones or not do so much hiding behind an email, people care about this community. They love this kahila so much and are so grateful for all the love and touches that a smaller congregation can give. I do want to we're looking right here at the demographic breakdown by age. Our largest age group still are retirees, ages 65 to 79, but those 80-plussers are given the 50 to 64 run for their money in terms of numbers. We've got some tough people in this congregation, including our beloved Frida, who will be turning, oh my goodness, 100 later in July, and we had so wanted to celebrate today with her. It was supposed to have been our Forever Frida special event. Someday when we can all be back in person, we will celebrate together. Jump ahead. Yeah, I'm doing this by myself. I'm running the slideshow and talking to you, and I can't see you at all. Our education update. Rabbi has already said thank you to Jude, and I want to reiterate that. I only had the 1 year to work with Jude in this position, but I've known Jude for a long time. She did some amazing things in the short 2 years that she stepped into this interim role, a part-time interim role. She built this curriculum that our kids have been working with, implementing the Shabbat school program in a creative and halachic way. She transformed Wednesday night school into something really fun and creative for the middle and high schoolers. She engaged with students and parents in a very personal way. And thank you so much for all the energy and special skills you brought to everything you do. So Yasher Koach, Jude. I hope you continue to work with us, at least on the education committee or in some capacity, because you're a delight to have around. And as Rabbi shared, we are delighted to announce that Dr. Sharon Pollin has been engaged for the year to oversee this next phase in our education program. We went through a really careful and thorough nationwide search for a professional full-time educator, and that search was interrupted and ultimately ended with the outbreak of the pandemic. After March 7th, with the statewide closure of the schools, Jude transformed the program into completely online learning, managing the Zoom classes for all the age groups. Rabbi did some teaching with the older kids as well. We are planning a hybrid learning model for the fall, just because nobody knows what's going to happen. And with the uncertainties, we have to be prepared to continue with online learning. And as such, we have decided to work with a program called Shalom Learning, which is a nationally proven online learning program, set curriculum with lesson plans for 28 sessions that can transfer from virtual back into the classroom seamlessly. Students will also have the increased opportunity to study with Rabbi Rose this year, which is neat because we're going to be expanding to a 2-day program. So a classroom teacher for one and Rabbi Rose for the other. And it's rare that students of this age get to have such close contact with their rabbi. And we will be looking to hire a permanent education director for the following year. So we're going to welcome Dr. Sharon Pollin. I'm just going to run through her bio very quickly. For those of you who don't know her, she is an experienced and highly skilled educator whose educational philosophy places learners at the center. She believes that students learn best and community thrives when school, family, and communities join together. Dr. Pollin earned her BA in elementary education and MS in educational supervision and administration. She studied Jewish texts at the Pardis Institute for Jewish Studies in Jerusalem and possesses a doctoral certification in Jewish education leadership, and she earned her doctorate in education leadership. Dr. Pollin successfully led the revitalization of the Jewish Community Day School in New Orleans, where she most recently served as head of school. Sharon is a collaborative and reflective educator whose work is consistently informed by best practice. She has a deep love of Judaism and for Congregation Shaarie Torah and is devoted to ensuring a warm, joyful learning experience for all. She believes the current circumstances provide an opportunity to reimagine what a vital, meaningful, engaging 21st century Jewish education can be, and is excited to be part of the shul's visioning work to ensure its future. She is delighted to come home to Shaarie Torah. So please welcome her back and switch speaker over to Sharon so she can say a few words, please.
Thank you, Jemmy, for that lovely introduction, and Rabbi Rose to you as well. And I just want to say how delighted I am that I can participate in this exciting time in the life of Shaarie Torah. And it really does feel like a homecoming for me, and I'm delighted to be with you all.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm very, very excited to be working with her again. All right, so now we're going to go into the financial section, and I will invite our treasurer, Peter Lyman, to take the spotlight and walk us through, and you just tell me when to flip the slides and I will do.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jemmy?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'd like to start the presentation with acknowledging really the tremendous generosity of our congregants over this last fiscal year. We've listed out basically all the line items that pertain to donations, and if my wife's addition is correct, since my eyesight's been impaired, this represents roughly $660,000 in donation for the last fiscal year, which is truly amazing given all that's been going on here the last 3 to 4 months. So on behalf of the board, the finance committee, I would like to thank all of our congregants for their generosity this year. It really helped us going. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about where we think we're going to end up here for this fiscal year. Like every other nonprofit out there, we certainly have felt the effects of COVID-19 as it impacted our revenue streams relative to the budget. We had 2 months of rent forbearance that we had to grant to Pipster because she was closed. I'm glad glad to say that she is now reopened in June and has made a June rental payment and is in the process of repaying us the back rents due over the term of her lease, which is about 4 years. So that's been one impact. Another obvious one has been decline in parking revenues. You probably, I don't know if you've been down to the parking lot, but the keypad's been removed. Last I heard, we were still getting our monthly payments from Milano, but any incremental revenues that we get from people using our parking lot have gone away. And then the last really significant one, being shut down, has closed off any fundraising opportunities we have for the remainder of the year. The last 3 months, we were anticipating on hosting the Milt Carl Award and, of course, the Frida Fest. And obviously, those two events are not going to occur. And I think we had roughly around 50,000 in the budget for those. That having been said, despite all of that, it appears that we are going to close the year close to a balanced budget, plus or minus 10,000. The latest estimates we have right now, Jackie's showing about a $7,000 end of year surplus. That's conditional on collecting dues for folks that still owe dues. So we'll see how that pans out. But the thing I would point out here is that we only got to this roughly break-even point by pulling out $50,000 from OJCF and $20,000 out of savings that was segregated and then released to operations. The $20,000 that involves just the wind up of the Milt Carl preschool, kind of termination benefits for Elizabeth that were paid over 6 months. We had that in the budget. The $15,000 we pulled out was to cover, that came out of the building fund, that came out to cover the expenses of the 2-room remodels for Pipster. So again, an expense that we couldn't finance out of cash flow. We had to pull it out of the building fund, the $15,000. But the payback period, provided she stays open, should be roughly 11 months to recoup those costs, given the additional rent that we're seeing. So next slide, please. Expenses, just kind of distribution of expenses. As you can see, like at probably any other nonprofit, the bulk of our expenses are located in personnel costs, wages, salaries, and benefits. Roughly 70% of our expenses. Now, we did have also a slight reduction in expenses the last 3 months of this year, basically because the building was shut down. So there's been no cooking, no kiddishes. We don't have to clean the building every day, and no heating or cooling. So we'll see. We've seen a reduction in some labor costs. Some of the staff have taken some reduced hours voluntarily, and some of the operating costs have gone down just basically because the building's closed. So that's kind of how we're going to get to roughly a break even. But I want to make it clear that we had to pull those funds from OJCF to get there. And to the extent that the cemetery breaks even or even runs a surplus, the money that was withdrawn from the cemetery fund will have to be repaid at some point. So we'll get the final numbers at the end of June from Jackie as to how the cemetery finished up. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at the 2021, next year's budget. As you're probably all aware, most corporations and whatnot have pulled any kind of financial guidance for the rest of the year, let alone the next quarter. The Finance Committee decided to take a stab at where we think we'll be in Q1 of this year. And the reason for that is roughly 60% of our revenues are realized in those first 3 to 4 months. So by September, end of September, we will have a good idea what we can expect as far as dues, Yom Kippur pledges, so forth. So we're going to use that Q1 results and then adjust the budget based on what the actuals are for Q1. Now, Jackie's projected out here that if this all holds, we're probably looking at a $157,000 deficit. I want to make a couple of points about this. First of all, this is a very conservative budget. We have assumed a very low level of revenues, I think around 934,000 compared to 1.1 million last year. So that's 170 plus thousand right there. Expenses are approximately the same as were budgeted last year. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. We do have, thanks to Jemmy, we qualified for the payroll participation plan. That will show up as income this new fiscal year as that loan gets converted to a grant. And we're very confident that that will happen, that there'll be no obligations on the part of Shaarie Torah to return that 125,000. Next slide, please. So, calls to actions here. There are a couple of levers we can start pushing here, and one is calling on their congregation to really step up and with increased dues, Yom Kippur pledges. We have budgeted in a very conservative number. I think we can beat that. As I said, we'll know by the end of September. But again, this is an appeal to the congregation. I know things are tough out there for a lot of folks, given the economy and what's going on. But this is a year that we really have to step up and get us through this year. As far as the Yom Kippur pledges, we have 2 generous benefactors who have pledged $15,000 in additional Yom Kippur funds. They will match all new Yom Kippur pledges up to $15,000. So if you didn't give last year, now's your opportunity to do it this year and get the matching funds. So the other risks that we have here, risks and opportunities. Again, we don't know when we'll be able to start fundraising again. when the building will be open, but there's been discussion perhaps of doing some kind of virtual fundraising event and so forth to kind of substitute for that. So we'll be looking at that. And one of the downside risks here that we have, I think on the revenue side, we've been conservative with the exception of the operations of Pipster. Given the increases now in the infections and so forth, you know, we're at risk in case she closes down again. We get roughly 9,000 a month from Pipster, and that would be a serious concern to me if she's forced to close down again. But so far so good, and Jemmy and I have been keeping in touch with her. Keep that up. So, and then the other thing then finally is, you know, trying to control our expenses. As a board, we've made the decision that, well, we have trimmed some labor costs and whatnot, mostly on a voluntary basis, and we have reduced hours that are being charged to us because of the building closure. We have basically left staffing levels intact, and we will do so until the end of high holidays. Once we see the results for Q1, then that may be an area that we have to start looking at. So I'm sorry we can't be more specific on this, but given the levels of uncertainty and so forth, this is our best stab at it. And as I said, the end of September, I think we'll have a pretty good idea where we're stacking up financially. So, okay.
So we have a poll in place for people to be able to vote on this proposal. It's a very specifically worded poll saying that you're approving this budget contingent upon we will revisit and revise after Q1. And for those who don't have access to the polling feature, depending on what device you're using, you can also put your vote, yes or no, into the chat room, and Amber and Alana will monitor. So if you all can put that poll up, please. I've actually never seen the other side of the polling process. It's kind of neat. We'll give it just another couple seconds. Thank you. It looks like we have 100% who are at this point who are going to participate. 88% have voted, and right now it is a unanimous yes that we are voting to approve the proposed budget with the provision it will be revised following Q1. So thank you. We can end the polling now.
I'd like to thank everybody for that, and you know, kind of the realization that it's it's difficult times for all of us. I am confident we will get through this year one way or the other, and next year will be awesome. Okay, that's all I could say. We get through this year to get to a place where we need to be next year, and we'll hear from the Futures Committee on that.
Thank you, Peter, so much.
Thank you, congregants.
All right. Let me get to, oh, there were our budget highlights. I'm sorry about these yellow squigglies on my screen. I don't know where they came from. So now we'll move on to the next presentation by the Futures Committee, and I'm inviting our board secretary, Rafi Rosenblatt, to take the screen.
Hi, everybody. Let me just get my video on. There we go. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. And as Peter shared, we are really excited about the future. Again, my name is Rafi Rosenblatt. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of the Futures Committee along with Darren Horwitz and Sarah Staggs. And the Futures Committee was appointed by the board in early 2020 to take stock of the headwinds affecting conservative Judaism and to begin to imagine a new path forward for Shaarie Torah. And the exciting part is that Shaarie Torah truly has made great strides over the past few years. I mean, you've heard some of this highlighted today, but even before that, we took steps to professionalize our operations as an institution. And we see that now by the incredible leadership that we have from both our executive director, Jemmy, from our rabbi, and from our engaged board. And we also continue to bring in new members and to help them engage even more deeply in synagogue life. And then, as we all know, COVID-19 happened, and it changed the world, including our world at Shaarie Torah. And the virus forced the Futures Committee to pause its work for a period of time while we just wrapped our heads around the new normal. And it's, at the same time, brought additional clarity to the Futures Committee and to the board. COVID has just accelerated all of the pre-virus trends that pose challenges to Shaarie Torah. But the flip side of this challenge, of this crisis, is opportunity. We have learned a tremendous amount about what is possible in a virtual space, simply because we have had to build community and deliver services while in quarantine. And as we and the rest of the world prepare for a future post-COVID, we now have an opportunity, really armed with this knowledge, to boldly reimagine what Shaarie Torah can be. And given the financial realities that we all know we face because of this, we really have no choice but to run at that future. And you heard the rabbi and Daniel talk about this before, but our mission, the goal of the Futures Committee, is to ensure the lasting success of Shaarie Torah by developing the most innovative institution of conservative Judaism in the United States, and we hope to become a model for others in the process. So as you see on the screen, the opportunity before us and our strategy to get there is really rooted in three key areas of focus. It's in building community, it's about investing in spiritual life, and it's about educating the next generation of Jews. And these foci were identified from the extensive surveys, the interviews, and the proposals that were all documented in the Sulam report that was completed back in. And we've really thought about two phases to this work in laying out a really concrete agenda to help bring Shaarie Torah into that future. So phase one, as you can see, is the short-term steps that we need to and can act on today. These are quick wins. These are things like capturing feedback coming out of a virtual session or making it easier for people to donate to the shul. And to that point, definitely expect to receive a short survey about this meeting in the near future. Phase two, as you see, is really about developing a longer-term plan that will require meaningful community input, member participation, and ultimately deeper donor investment. And the specific activities employed at each phase stem from our three areas of focus. Let's go to the next slide. So our vision for the future is for Shaarie Torah to build what we're calling a borderless synagogue. And you might be wondering, what is a borderless synagogue? Well, it's one that really builds a suite of Jewish, spiritual, educational, and community services that are accessible to everyone, whether they live in Portland or further away. But I think this is really important to underscore. The borderless synagogue is not merely a virtual or a digital experience. Though it is clear that we can do a lot virtually, We know that bringing our community together in person is essential, and that borderless experience is still rooted in our physical core, in our building at 920 Northwest 25th, and ultimately in the people who work and worship there. Building a borderless synagogue is about expanding our community, which in the COVID era is more needed than ever. And we need to meet people where they are physically, where they are spiritually, and where they are emotionally post-COVID as well. And the principles underlying a borderless synagogue are fundamentally about finding ways to be more welcoming and to engage a larger piece of Am Yisrael, of the people of Israel, and using our Hamish atmosphere to bring people into our community is something that we have long seen as one of our most important differentiators. It's also something that, with the proper execution, we can use to put ourselves on much more stable financial footing and to set ourselves up for even greater opportunities as COVID recedes. Let's go to the next slide. So here are some examples of ways that a borderless synagogue can work by kind of zooming in on one of our areas of focus, on that one about build community. So we could think about further expanding programmatic offerings with creative, diverse, and constant programming that's available daily that we could include a variety of subjects, both religious and secular. And the key opportunity is that we know people, both inside our community and outside of CST, are already building community in a variety of other ways that help meet their spiritual and secular needs. And we can do more to reach out, connect with them, and to invite them to share those communities with us inside of CST's borderless synagogue. So those things like adult education and book clubs, and virtual happy hours, and social action programming, and the rabbi's regular learning opportunities. These are just examples of the kinds of programs. But the goal is both the volume and the variety of the programming, things that span both the religious and secular. And we want to make sure that we are providing a broader range of what people are regularly finding to be, real, enticing programming. So again, it's not just about having a full calendar up on our website, but it's about recognizing that people have already turned to things like gyms and dinner parties and volunteer activities for the community that previous generations often built within the synagogue. And so what we want to do is aspire to meet people where they are, to really help them find the same kinds of community within CST that they are looking for without. And that end result, in this case, could be akin to something like a virtual 92nd Street Y, right? That hallmark institution in New York City. And we are thinking about that because of both its programmatic breadth and because of its relevancy for members of the Shaarie Torah community. Next slide. So in phase 2, thinking about that physical space, we just know that as COVID subsides, that need for physical connection will be stronger than ever. And we are just really excited to expand our offerings and once again anchor our community in our synagogue. And part of that plan involves taking a fresh look at how we further capitalize on our building. Our building is a terrific asset that is just not fully utilized. And as part of the phase 2 work, the Futures Committee and the board will be engaging with the Shaarie Torah community as a whole to reimagine who uses and how we can use our physical space in its premium location. We believe that our building can, in addition to serving our synagogue, be transformed into a community hub for Portland Jewish life, as well as potentially secular services that complement our values and traditions, and again, further help us expand our definition of community. So the Futures Committee and the Shaarie Torah board and staff are already starting to work on this plan. Phase 1 programming will begin this summer as we start conversations with the community around these areas of focus, programming interests, and the future uses of the building. We're going to be sending out surveys in July to help to gather some feedback on the potential areas of interest from everyone, and we'll need support from the entire community to fulfill this vision. We'll also be holding Zoom meetings throughout the summer and into the fall to discuss some of these various issues and the details with the Shaarie Torah community, to really begin to decide what programming we'd like to see and how to best utilize our building space. And I just want to name it. I mean, this is an exciting time, and the Futures Committee and the board believe that we have a great opportunity here. We're living in a time where the idea of what a shul should be is changing, and the vision of what a shul can be is expanding. And with the proper use of technology, we can reach out to people all over Portland, maybe even across the nation, and help bring them into our kahila, into our community. We have the ability, with thoughtful and deliberate action by our staff, clergy, and congregants, to make Shaarie Torah a model of the 21st century synagogue experience and a leader in Jewish life. So I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you so much for everything that everyone is already doing to make Shaarie Torah an incredible place. And thank you in advance for everything that I know this community will continue to do to make our shul even stronger. So I'm going to pause there. I know that folks have been submitting questions along the way. If you have additional questions, you can feel free to type them into the chat, since I know we're going to be going through a bunch of questions and people may have questions specifically about the Futures Committee or just about anything that we've shared thus far. So I will turn the floor back over to Jemmy.
Thank you, Rafi. And it's a wonderful presentation. You can see on the screen, if you can see the screen, that we have a special email address specifically for the Futures Committee at cstfuture@shaarietorah.org. You can send additional questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions about ways you can be involved with this ongoing process to the Futures Committee. And thank you, Daniel, for telling Amber to text me that those squiggly lines I accidentally did by hitting the paintbrush and then running my mouse all over the screen instead of hitting the advanced slide button. Oops, one of those technical glitches. So as Rafi said, we have gotten to the part of the meeting where it's questions and answers, and now you can clearly see my squiggles, but I can stop sharing the screen now. And Amber and Ilana will be jumping in with questions to be posed to the rabbi, to Daniel as our president, to Rafi as futures, to Peter as financial. And thank you all so much. I'm going to stop my share now.
So we haven't had any questions yet in the chat, but we have had some questions emailed to us beforehand. Do you want me to go to those, Jemmy?
Yes, please.
Awesome. So the first question is, can non-Jewish spouses become members of Shaarie Torah? In other words, where do things stand in terms of changing constitutional language to expand the definitions of membership and how it affects non-Jewish spouses' partners? You're muted, Rabbi.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So that is one of the most important questions, I think, probably facing our synagogue on the ritual side of things. And I'll just say that that's a conversation that I think the questioner probably knows is a conversation that we started and that we paused and need to continue. And I think that as the congregation moves forward and especially embraces this moment in the way that Rafi and the Futures Committee just shared, I think this is a question we're going to have to circle back to. What I will say is that I think that there are a bunch of different ways to answer this question. One of the ways is how does the synagogue work on being a welcoming place and acknowledging the place of non-Jewish members of the community? There, I think we've made a good start, and we have probably farther to do. I think we have more work to do on being more actively welcoming and acknowledging. We've had conversations at the Ritual Committee about various dimensions about how this topic affects ritual practices, from participation in services and and how it affects burial practices in the cemetery. So I would say it's an ongoing conversation that we need to continue to push forward. But I don't think we are yet where we need to be as a congregation. So I would say in process is the best answer right now.
Another question sort of going off of that, are we bound to stay within the conservative movement's rabbinical candidates, or can we look outside of the RA?
I'm going to let somebody from the Futures Committee answer that.
Hey folks, this is Rafi again. So this is a great question. I think the reality is that we know that there are pros and cons to working within the conservative movement's system. The pro is that we have access to all of the candidates coming out of the conservative movement rabbinical schools, as well as any other rabbis who are in the conservative movement now. The challenge is that we are required then to only work within that pool of candidates. So part of what we hope to do in the conversations that we have with you all that Daniel referenced, where we're going to be understanding more about what we're looking for in a candidate, is we can also get clearer on where we think those candidates are going to exist. And so I think this is a question that we really haven't made an official decision on. We understand that there are risks to working outside of the conservative movement structure because we don't know exactly who might apply for this opportunity.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
Oh, sorry. I was speaking to my wife. Sorry about that.
Okay. Still risks, guys. There are still risks. But I think that is the trade-off that we are all aware of, and I think this is again a conversation that ultimately the community is weighing on.
Awesome. So the next question is for our finance team. Does the budget deficit include salary for the new education director?
Yes. And we'll be refining those numbers with Jackie, but yeah, that's in there.
Awesome. Quick, easy answer.
Yeah.
Another question we have is the board or rabbi intending to continue any Zoom services and classes during transition to the new normal or once everything opens back up?
Well, one thing that we know about the new normal is that there's no such thing as normal. First of all, I think that the short answer is we don't know, but I think it makes sense in some capacity. So what I would say is we're not even sure when we're going to be able to gather. I think there was a lot of optimism recently, and there's been a lot of planning going on behind the scenes, but the events over the last couple of weeks, just looking at the New York Times just before I got on here today, I think that the rise in cases over the last 2 weeks nationally is almost 70%. So it's too early to begin talking about that, and therefore I think a little bit too early to imagine what our coherent plan will be once we do gather physically. So let me just say two things. One is sort of general and one's more specific. Generally speaking, I think it's clear that we have identified, as many communities have identified, the opportunities that were right under our nose before all of this COVID stuff happened that we weren't even aware of until we had to start connecting digitally. And I'm sure that I know that part of our programming is going to heavily draw on the opportunities to continue to learn virtually or gather virtually, even when we come back. That's one thing. In terms of whether we will be gathering for virtual minyanim, for prayer services together, that I don't know. There's no way to really answer this without getting a little bit technical halachically, but the conservative movement permitted online gatherings to constitute a minyan for certain purposes. So for example, by gathering virtually, one could say Kaddish together. You could form a minyan for the purpose of saying the mourner's Kaddish, but not for doing Baruch Hu and doing the repetition of the Amidah and doing the full Torah service. And those were, and even the allowances that were made on a temporary basis. They were intended to just span the breadth of time that people were prevented from gathering because of COVID. And so the assumption was, when there were no longer prohibitions on gathering together, that those permissions to constitute a minyan virtually would also be in place. So it's a little bit too early to tell. And as we get closer to the time that we can gather again, then I and the ritual committee will be doing a deep dive to figure out, beyond the virtual gatherings we know that we'll be doing for different events and for learning, whether we'll extend those to the realm of tefillah. So don't know is the short answer.
Thank you, Rabbi. Daniel wants to say something regarding the non-RA rabbis. If you want to go ahead.
There, now I can unmute. Yes, one with regard to the allowing rabbis outside of the rabbinical assembly to consider us as a congregation that they can apply to. Once we have started the rabbinical search process and we've come up with our document that such rabbinical candidates can review, if somebody outside of the RA wants to come to us and be considered as a rabbinical candidate for us, they can file some paperwork with the rabbinical assembly and basically have some sort of commitment to updating their smicha in such a way that it's acceptable to the rabbinical assembly, and commit to join the rabbinical assembly. It's kind of like the H-1B visa process, that allows a foreign worker to come into the United States to start working. It's just basically the process involves getting that rabbi into the rabbinical assembly by a recognized process.
Awesome, thanks. So we have one last question, unless anyone else decides to say anything in the chat. And it is, would this congregation consider leading or being part of a visible Jewish presence in the recent Portland protests?
The short answer is yes. I personally, let me answer it like this. I personally have participated in some of those protests and some of the gatherings. As I've shared with the congregation, I've been very uplifted and inspired by the movement of young activists and the millions of people across the country who support them. I include myself along with that, along with those. In terms of the congregation's position as a congregation, once in a while there's like a letter or something where I might sign on for the congregation, but generally the way we're going to approach this is through programming. And actually something that I had wanted to get out this past week and didn't, but you'll be seeing over the coming week, is I actually want, for me, what this moment offers for Jews with white skin and Americans with white skin is first and foremost an opportunity to listen and to learn as the first step. And so with that in mind, what I want to invite the congregation into is the beginning of a learning process about race in America. And I was gonna save this for an email, but I'll just share with you. I'm going to propose that we read a book together and then we gather virtually to discuss it. And the particular book that I'm choosing is a book called White Rage that was put together by a historian. I think her name is Carol Anderson, but I might have that wrong. And essentially, it is about the history of legislation and economic decisions and other factors that have gone into that have shaped the policy and economic and cultural environment within which African Americans have operated in this country. So it sort of goes from the Civil War forward and sort of traces the ongoing race relations. And it's extraordinarily eye-opening. It's a very profoundly moving and powerful book. And so I'm going to propose that we read this book together, and then we'll have a couple of virtual meetings, and that we're going to begin with a sort of watch party of a lecture given by the author. So that'll be our first step into learning and educating ourselves, which again, I think is the most important step for us. And then in addition to that, we're also sending, and we will also send out a very, very extensive list of resources for your own further learning, including podcasts, articles, videos, a list of books, and individuals to follow on Twitter, etc. And I want to thank Ilana and Amber and also Jackie in our office for helping to put together some of those resources that I will share with folks. I have, in addition to that, I have reached out in my own learning. I've reached out to an organization in the area called Resolutions Northwest that's putting together a seminar for leaders to educate themselves about issues of white privilege and racial justice in terms of leadership. And Jemmy is also signed up for that, so I'm educating myself individually. And then as there are opportunities for us to participate in the city in some of these, whether they be educational seminars or whether they're moments to come together to demonstrate our support for values that we believe in, I'll be sharing those opportunities with the congregation as well. So in other words, look for more to come. We've got some specific stuff and some that are in the pipeline, and then some other issues that, some other opportunities that we'll be looking for in an ongoing way.
Awesome, thank you, Rabbi. Are there any other questions? In the chat, Dory wants to put out, if anyone is interested in helping assist get the gift shop online, let her know.
Okay, so it seems like we're wrapping up business here. I apologize again for all the little boxes that kept popping up while the slideshow was on. Anytime someone rang the bell to come into the meeting, things would pop up on my screen and that would block. And because I was screen sharing, I couldn't see any of you or fix that. So thank you for working with me and rolling with us on that. It's our first big meeting. We were at capacity today. I know some people were not able to get into the meeting. They registered too late or we were already full. So if anybody fetches to you and says, I couldn't come to the annual meeting, think of it as, but look how full our annual meeting was. This is fantastic turnout and we didn't even have to feed you. I know some of you have been sending me private messages in the chat and I've taken notes. I'll try to get back to you tomorrow with answers. And Mom, I'm at home, not at the office. This is my bedroom floor. And as for now, I think it's the time, unless anybody has anything else to bring up, that we can all unmute ourselves, put ourselves up on screen, and do that big Brady Bunch hello that I think we're all waiting for. So, anybody? Everybody?
Everybody.
Let's do.
Thank you to everybody. I would love to, let's schmooze, people.
Let's do.
Gemma, you have to unblock us for the video.
The host.
Ilana and Amber are handling that side of things.
Thank you.
The host can do it.
Can't see anybody.
Hang out, it's coming.
Almost, not quite. Very soon.
Did I hear Mary?
Yes, you did. Can you say hi to Rabbi?
I can't see you.
Oh, look, the
I
Franks
know.
are in
Camera's
bed
not on.
together.
No, you can't do it. They'll see us in a second.
Hi.
Look at all these people.
Look at that. Harvey and Jackie, are you guys in bed?
It looks like it.
Linda.
Watch that camera, folks.
Relax, people. Jackie and Harvey, you guys need to chill out.
Comfortable, you guys.
At least he's awake.
Sometime.
That's
Oh,
hilarious.
oh my gosh.
Oh.
You know,
That's really
that,
good.
that looks like
There's people in bed.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
We're in bed.
Relaxing.
Here's your guys.
Jack Falk, what does your shirt say?
Ashkenaz, of course.
Oh,
Yes.
I love that. That's really cool. That's great.
Yes, exactly.
I should say hello to everybody out there. And if anybody doesn't know my number, they know where to find it at the synagogue.
Okay, Dory, you're right. I know where to find you.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you don't need the video started.
Is that Eva and Sophia?
Yes,
Hey,
and
guys.
Sterling.
Yeah, oh, hi, Sterling. How are you guys? Good to see you.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Denny Schleifer.
Here.
There's Danny.
Excellent meeting. Thank you very much. A lot of excellent information.
Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Great meeting.
Bye,
Hello.
everyone.
Richard
Bye.
Bird
Wish
has
we
the
could be
coolest
with you in
background of
person.
anybody.
Oh my gosh. Look at
Bye, all.
Bye.
Hello,
Hi,
Jen.
everyone.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Nat.
Hey, it's great to see everyone.
Hi, Leslie.
I'll check it.
Wait.
What page was that?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Sturtzes.
Who said hi, Daniel?
Play the Hollywood Squares theme song in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking Brady Bunch.
Richard.
Look at that. Oh, that is the coolest background. Is that Yerushalayim?
That's a 3D model I built of Yerushalayim a while ago, and then I used Photoshop to turn it into a canvas painting.
Wow. I like, man, you've been using your free time very well.
How about you shaved your beard? Is it coming back or are you keeping it off now?
Well, it comes back when I go to sleep, and then I gotta.
Hey, Robert. Sarah, great to see you.
Hey, Jason.
Hey. Oh, hi, Jason.
Hey,
Nice to
Jason.
see
Good
everyone.
to see you. How are you?
Hi, Dory.
Jason, thank you again for the kippah. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I got this one day too.
Oh, gorgeous.
For me.
Love it.
Nice.
Great meeting. Thank you all.
Yeah, it was
All right,
you.
everybody. Take care. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Yasher
Johanna.
Koach to all of the leadership and to the staff. Jemmy, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, there's Sharona.
Hi. Bye, Daniel. Bye,
Amber, Ilana, thank you,
Bye-bye.
ladies.
Bye. Miss you all.
Good night, John Boy.
Meeting. Yeah.
Good night, Mom.
Good night, Mary Ellen.
Hi, John Boy. Hey, Serena.
Hi, bye.
Bye.
Hi,
Hi,
Jerry.
Jerry Newman. I love you.
Love you too.
And now everybody knows I love Jerry Newman.
Uh-oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Everybody
I talk to him
loves Jerry
almost every
Newman.
day.
But everybody loves Jerry Newman.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's the new sitcom. Everybody loves Jerry Newman.
How much do I have to pay you for that?
A lot. Loads. I expect my check in the mail.
Oh yeah, the check is in the mail. Don't worry.
Excellent. Okay, good.
Okay.
I'm donating it to the synagogue.
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. I am going to log off and stand up since I've been on the floor this whole time.
Bye, everybody. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Everything.
Bye.
Sunday
Bye,
evening.
everyone. Bye, Leslie.
And look, you don't have to drive home now.
Well, that's a plus.
Yeah.
Oh, but we're not.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Gary.
There we are.
Good
Rabbi?
Yeah.
There's Rabbi.
And there's the little rabbi.
That had to be Jerry.
Of course.
It's just a wild guess.
Yeah.